Today, we're diving into a really pivotal moment in history, a 2-year period that would literally shape a civilization. We're focusing on the leadership of the first caliph, Abu Bakr.
So here's where we're headed. First, we'll look at the massive crisis the community faced after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Then, we'll get into Abu Bakr's incredible pledge that set a whole new standard. After that, we'll tackle the huge challenge that threatened to tear everything apart, see how his leadership was truly forged in that fire, and finally, wrap up with the lasting legacy he left behind.
All right, first up, a community in crisis. And to really get this, you have to try and put yourself in their shoes. Just imagine for a second, your leader, your guide, your prophet is suddenly gone. That was the reality back in 623 AD. You have this brand new Muslim state just reeling from grief and absolute uncertainty. The unity they had was so fragile, and it looked like it could just shatter into 1,000 pieces. So, the question hanging in the air wasn't just, what's next? It was way bigger than that. It was, can this community even survive? And they needed an answer, fast.
Into this moment of total uncertainty, Abu Bakr is chosen as the successor, the caliph. And one of the very first things he does is deliver this powerful pledge that would define his entire rule.
And what's so amazing about this speech is that it wasn't some declaration of power. Not at all. It was all about humility, accountability, and responsibility. It was a totally new kind of contract.
Just look at these principles. He's saying, I'm not here to invent things. I'm not even the best one of you. He promises to stand up for the weak and hold the powerful accountable. And then the final point, which is absolutely crucial. Obey me only as long as I obey God and his messenger. He's making his authority conditional on justice. He's making himself accountable to everyone.
But, a pledge is one thing. Living up to it when everything's on the line, well, that's another story. And this new leadership was about to be tested in a way you can hardly imagine. A huge rebellion threatened to shatter the entire community.
And this massive crisis, it all came down to a core principle of the faith, zakah, the obligatory charity. What happened was several powerful tribes basically said, look, our loyalty was to the prophet, peace be upon him. That doesn't automatically transfer to you. And so they refused to pay the zakah to the central state in Medina.
In this table right here, it just perfectly captures the standoff. The tribes saw zakah as a kind of political tax, something they could negotiate. But Abu Bakr, for him, this was an existential threat. This wasn't politics. This was about the integrity of the faith itself. You couldn't just pick and choose which pillars to follow. So how Abu Bakr responded in this exact moment? Well, it wouldn't just define his time as leader. It was going to set the course for the entire future of the Muslim community.
And this whole period, this intense conflict, would become known in history as the Ridda Wars, or the Wars of Apostasy. So, seeing the danger clear as day, Abu Bakr didn't hesitate. He took immediate, decisive action. First, he sized up the threat. He knew this wasn't just a disagreement. Then, he got the community ready for a fight, and finally, he completely rejected their demand. No compromise on the core principles of the faith.
And this is where you see his genius as a leader. It wasn't just about his own personal faith. It was also incredibly shrewd. He knew he needed the right people for the job, so he kept the brilliant general Khalid ibn al-Walid in command. He understood that this was a crisis that couldn't be solved with gentleness alone. I mean, just think about the pressure. The people around him were in awe. One of his companions said the crisis was the kind of thing that could make mountains crumble, but they never saw Abu Bakr show a moment of weakness.
And where did that incredible strength come from? Well, he himself tied it back to his deep, unshakable faith. It was this spiritual courage that anchored him through the entire storm.
Okay, so we've seen the crisis, we've seen the unbelievable resolve. Now let's talk about the result of it all. What was the legacy of this leadership?
Well, the outcome was a victory. The Ridda Wars were won, the rebellion was put down, and the community was pulled back from the very brink of collapse. But the impact was so much bigger than just that.
You have to remember his rule was incredibly short, just about 2 years. But look at what happened in that time. He saved the community's unity, he established that you can't separate prayer from charity, and for the first time ever, he unified the entire Arabian Peninsula. He set that powerful precedent for accountable leadership and truly paved the way for everything that came next. He didn't just prevent a collapse, he solidified the very foundations of a future civilization.
So, it leaves us with a pretty powerful question, doesn't it?
In these moments of intense crisis, what is it that really defines true leadership? Well, the story of Abu Bakr seems to suggest it's an unwavering commitment to your principles, even when the price seems impossibly high. That's our explainer for today.